Princess Lyra stood on the edge of the cliff, her long silver hair dancing in the cold wind that swept across the barren plains of Virelia. Below her, the battlefield stretched for miles, scarred with craters and debris from countless clashes. The sky above was dark, streaked with smoke and fire from the ongoing conflict. She clenched her fists, feeling the familiar rush of anger and determination. Humans had come to her world, and she hated them with every fiber of her being. They were reckless, destructive, and careless, disturbing the harmony of her people's home. She had been taught since childhood that humans were nothing but invaders, and she had believed it without question. The Illyrian army moved with precision, their lithe bodies gliding over the battlefield like shadows. Lyra's armor shimmered under the faint light, a combination of elegant design and deadly efficiency. She was not just a princess. She was the fiercest warrior of her generation. Her troops looked up to her with admiration and fear. She could feel their eyes on her, trusting her to lead them to victory. Yet today, something felt different. There was a strange tension in the air, a feeling that this battle would be unlike any other. Across the field, the humans advanced. Their uniforms were bulky, and their weapons looked crude compared to the sleek energy blades of the Illyrians. Lyra's first instinct was to sneer. They were slow, unrefined, and completely unprepared for the skill of her people. Yet, even from a distance, she noticed something unusual about their leader. A man in silver armor moved with calm precision, guiding his soldiers not with force, but with careful strategy. Lyra's sharp eyes followed him, her curiosity piqued despite herself. The battle began with the roar of energy cannons and the hum of Illyrian blades cutting through the air. Lyra led the charge, her movements fluid and deadly. Humans fell back under the first wave, and she felt the satisfaction of superiority. But the man, their captain, remained steady. He did not charge blindly or panic. Instead, he gave commands that allowed his soldiers to move efficiently, protecting each other and minimizing losses. Lyra's pride bristled. How could a human be so organized? Her anger surged, but so did something she had never felt before: respect. She shook her head, trying to dismiss the feeling. There was no room for respect in war, only victory and survival. Hours passed, and the battlefield became a twisted landscape of fire and smoke. Both sides suffered heavy losses, yet neither was willing to retreat. Lyra's mind raced, analyzing every move the humans made. She realized they were not as weak as she had believed. They adapted quickly, learned from mistakes, and most importantly, fought with purpose. Unlike some of her own soldiers, they did not flee when danger approached. They stood their ground, facing her army with courage that was almost admirable. At one point, Lyra's attention was drawn to a group of human soldiers trapped under a collapsing structure. Without thinking, she leapt forward, her instincts as a warrior guiding her. She cut through debris and pulled one of the humans free just as a beam fell where he had stood. The man looked up at her, his eyes wide with shock, and then nodded in gratitude. Lyra felt a strange warmth in her chest. She hated humans, but she could not deny the bravery she had just witnessed. The clash continued until the sun began to set, painting the sky with streaks of red and gold. The battlefield was quiet now, filled only with the distant moans of the wounded and the crackle of dying fires. Both armies had suffered greatly, and it was clear that the fight could not continue without further losses that neither side could afford. Lyra stood among the fallen, surveying the aftermath. Her heart pounded, not from exhaustion, but from an unfamiliar sense of wonder. These humans, who she had been taught to despise, had fought with honor. They had strategies, intelligence, and courage that rivaled even the finest Illyrian warriors. And yet, her hatred remained, tangled with a new, confusing feeling. From the shadows, the human captain approached. His armor was scratched, and his face was streaked with sweat and dirt. But his eyes were steady and confident. He stopped a few meters away from Lyra, bowing slightly out of respect. "Princess Lyra," he said, his voice calm and steady. "We do not wish for needless bloodshed. There is more we can accomplish by understanding each other than by fighting endlessly." Lyra's jaw tightened. She wanted to dismiss his words, to see them as weakness, but deep inside, she felt a flicker of doubt. Could it be that humans were not as simple as she had been taught? That they were capable of more than destruction and chaos? She turned away, unwilling to show any sign of hesitation. The humans retreated under the cover of night, leaving the battlefield to the Illyrians. Lyra watched them go, her mind racing with thoughts she did not understand. For the first time, she felt the world was larger than the lessons she had been taught. There was more than loyalty to her people, more than hatred for the enemy. There was strategy, bravery, and perhaps even honor in the hearts of humans. That night, in the quiet of her chambers, Lyra could not sleep. Images of the human captain kept replaying in her mind his calm movements, the way he protected his soldiers, his unwavering gaze even in the heat of battle. She shook her head, frustrated by the emotions stirring within her. She hated humans, yet she could not ignore the truth she had seen with her own eyes. Lyra knew that the war was far from over. There would be more battles, more losses, and more reasons to despise humans. Yet, deep down, a seed of curiosity had been planted, a seed that would grow in ways she could not yet imagine. For the first time in her life, the Princess of Virelia wondered what it would be like to understand the humans. To see them not as enemies, but as something more. The wind howled outside her window, carrying the faint echoes of distant explosions. Lyra stood once more, staring at the horizon where the sun had disappeared. The battlefield was silent, but the war and her own journey of understanding was only beginning. The morning sun rose over Virelia, casting golden light across the scarred plains. Princess Lyra walked among her soldiers, inspecting the aftermath of the battle. She could see the exhaustion on their faces, the weight of loss heavy in their eyes. Yet there was also pride. Her people had survived another day, another attack, and the humans had retreated. But Lyra's thoughts were not on victory. They lingered on the human captain, Elias Kane, and the strange feelings he had stirred within her. A message arrived from the Illyrian Council, summoning her to a diplomatic meeting. Reluctantly, Lyra prepared herself, knowing that she would have to face the humans again. She had no desire to meet them under peaceful circumstances, yet curiosity tugged at her. What did humans want? Why did they fight with such determination, and yet show signs of restraint? When she arrived at the neutral meeting chamber, she saw Elias Kane waiting. He stood tall, his armor slightly battered from the previous battle. But his posture was calm and composed. His eyes met hers, steady and unwavering, as though he could see everything she felt but could not admit. "Princess Lyra," he said, bowing slightly. "I am glad you accepted this meeting. We want to avoid further bloodshed. There is much that humans and Illyrians can learn from each other." Lyra's lips pressed into a thin line. "Humans speak of peace, yet your kind has invaded our lands. Do you not see the destruction you have caused?" Kane's expression did not falter. "We do. And that is why we are here to find a better way. Fighting endlessly benefits no one. Not you, not us, not the worlds around us." Lyra felt a flicker of doubt. His words were sincere, and his eyes reflected honesty. She wanted to reject it, to cling to the hatred that had guided her life. But something inside her resisted. She realized that perhaps Kane was not like other humans she had encountered. Over the next days, Lyra and Kane were forced to work together. The council arranged joint missions to assess the damage to settlements, repair vital infrastructure, and protect civilians from remaining threats. At first, Lyra kept her distance, watching Kane with suspicion. She expected him to make reckless decisions, but he moved with careful thought, always ensuring the safety of those around him. During one mission, a supply transport was ambushed by rogue Illyrians who refused to follow the truce. Lyra leapt into action, her energy blade cutting through the attackers with precision. Kane moved beside her, coordinating humans and even some of Lyra's soldiers who were willing to follow his lead. Together, they managed to repel the ambush. Lyra noticed how he protected his people, giving orders that minimized risk while still achieving their goal. After the battle, they tended to the wounded. Lyra found herself watching Kane as he moved among the injured, offering calm words and steady hands. He did not boast. He did not demand respect. He simply helped. Lyra could not understand why she felt a strange warmth in her chest as she observed him. She had been taught to hate humans, yet here was one who embodied qualities she admired in her own people: courage, honor, and selflessness. One evening, as the sky darkened with violet and silver hues, Lyra and Kane walked through a village to inspect repairs. The humans had set up temporary shelters, while the Illyrians worked to stabilize damaged structures. Lyra noticed a small child watching them from behind a wall, wide-eyed and scared. Kane crouched beside the child, speaking softly in a language she did not understand. The child's expression changed from fear to relief, and then to a small smile. Lyra felt something shift inside her. Humans were not just invaders. They were capable of care, protection, and kindness. Despite these experiences, Lyra's heart was still torn. She could not forget the lives lost, the destruction wrought by humans' initial arrival. Hatred lingered, stubborn and heavy, even as admiration grew. She wondered if it was possible to reconcile the two feelings, or if she would always be trapped between them. Their growing cooperation did not go unnoticed. The rogue Illyrian commander, a man named Varkon, began spreading rumors among Lyra's people, claiming that she was being seduced by human lies. Some soldiers whispered doubt in her ears, questioning her loyalty. Lyra dismissed them outwardly, but inwardly, the words gnawed at her. Could she trust Kane? Could she trust herself to see humans as more than enemies? During a mission to recover lost technology from a crash site, Lyra and Kane found themselves trapped in a canyon, cut off from their teams by a sudden rock slide. The air was thick with dust, and the walls of the canyon seemed to close in around them. Kane immediately assessed their situation, finding a narrow path to safety. Lyra followed, relying on his guidance, surprised by how natural it felt to trust him. For the first time, she did not feel the need to control everything. She let someone else lead. As they reached the canyon's edge, Lyra looked at Kane, feeling the weight of their shared experiences pressing against her chest. He had saved lives, guided her through danger, and earned her respect. She could no longer deny that humans were capable of greatness. And yet, admitting admiration was dangerous, even to herself. She turned away, pretending to examine the horizon, but the warmth she felt lingered, stubborn and undeniable. Back at the temporary headquarters, Lyra received reports of increasing rogue activity. Varkon had not stopped, and his attacks threatened to undo the fragile truce. Lyra realized that cooperation with humans was no longer optional. Their knowledge, skill, and perspective were essential to protecting her people. Reluctantly, she accepted that humans were not just worthy adversaries, they could be allies. The following days were a delicate balance of diplomacy and action. Lyra and Kane coordinated patrols, mediated disputes, and repaired infrastructure. The humans proved their worth again and again, not through raw power, but through ingenuity, strategy, and unwavering determination. Lyra found herself learning from them, even as she taught them about Illyrian tactics and traditions. One night, as the twin moons rose over the plains, Lyra stood alone, reflecting on everything that had happened. Her hatred had not vanished completely, but it had softened. She could no longer see humans as a single, monolithic enemy. They were individuals, capable of kindness and courage, of mistakes and brilliance. Cain had become the symbol of that realization, and she could not ignore the feelings that stirred when she thought of him. Lyra understood that the war was far from over. Battles would continue, and challenges would rise that would test both species. Yet, for the first time, she believed that humans and Illyrians could find a way to coexist, perhaps even thrive together. And though she would never admit it aloud, she looked forward to seeing Cain again not just as a captain, but as someone who had changed her understanding of the world. The wind whispered across the plains, carrying the faint sounds of distant conflict. Lyra's heart was heavy with responsibility, but light with a newfound curiosity. The princess who had hated humans was beginning a journey she could never have predicted. She had glimpsed the possibility of understanding, trust, and perhaps even friendship. And the thought filled her with both excitement and apprehension. The sun rose the next morning, casting light over the recovering lands. Lyra donned her armor, ready for the next mission. She no longer saw humans as mere invaders, but as beings with the capacity for honor, bravery, and change. And somewhere in the back of her mind, she knew that Captain Elias Cain would be at her side, shaping not only the battles ahead, but her own heart in ways she had yet to understand. The winds of Vierelia carried a restless energy as Lyra led her forces through a narrow canyon. Reports had come in that Varkon's rogue faction had seized a key supply depot. Supplies were vital to the survival of both Illyrians and humans, and the loss could tip the fragile balance of their alliance. Lyra's mind raced with plans and contingencies, yet beneath her careful calculations was a feeling she could not name, a mixture of excitement and unease whenever she thought of Cain. Cain rode beside her on his hoverbike, scanning the canyon walls with a keen eye. He did not speak much, allowing the silence between them to settle. Yet his presence was commanding, a quiet assurance that she had learned to rely on. Lyra kept her gaze forward, determined not to let her feelings distract her, but she felt a strange comfort in knowing he was near. As they approached the depot, the sounds of battle echoed through the canyon. Energy weapons flashed, illuminating the rocks with bright, crackling light. Lyra's heart pounded as she saw humans and Illyrians fighting side by side against Varkon's forces. Chaos reigned, but there was a rhythm to the fight, a careful strategy that kept their teams coordinated. Cain called out commands, his voice cutting through the noise, guiding both species with precision. Lyra joined the fray, her energy blades slicing through enemies with fluid motion. Every strike was deliberate, every movement calculated. She had fought countless battles, but something about this one felt different. She was not just defending her people, she was fighting alongside beings she had once despised, and yet trusted more than anyone else in the field. During the battle, a massive explosion shook the canyon walls, sending debris crashing down. Lyra was thrown off her feet, landing hard on the rocky ground. Dust and smoke filled her lungs, and for a moment, she feared she would not rise again. Then, she felt a firm hand gripping her arm, pulling her to safety. Cain had reached her, shielding her from falling debris with his own body. She looked up at him, stunned. He was breathing hard, his armor scorched and battered, but his eyes held steady determination. "Stay close," he shouted over the roar of battle. "We can get through this together." Lyra nodded, the words catching in her throat. She had expected humans to fight recklessly, to abandon caution in the heat of battle. But Cain was different. He did not seek glory or revenge. He sought survival and victory for everyone involved. Lyra felt her anger and prejudice crumble in the presence of such unwavering courage. They moved through the chaos, clearing debris and rescuing trapped soldiers. At one point, a young Illyrian warrior was cornered by Varkon's elite guards. Lyra and Cain arrived just in time, coordinating their attacks seamlessly. Cain's movements were precise and thoughtful, while Lyra's strikes were swift and powerful. Together, they created a path for the young warrior to escape. demonstrating trust and teamwork that went beyond words. After the immediate danger passed, they paused behind a rocky outcrop to catch their breath. The air was thick with smoke and the acrid scent of burning machinery. Lyra's armor was scratched, her blade chipped, yet she felt more alive than ever. Cain wiped sweat from his brow, his eyes meeting hers with a mixture of relief and unspoken understanding. "You fought well," he said simply, his voice calm but sincere. Lyra's chest tightened. She had never sought praise, yet his words felt like more than recognition. They felt like understanding. "We both did," she replied, her tone steady but soft. She realized, with a hint of surprise, that she no longer saw him as the enemy. He had earned her respect in a way no human ever had. The battle was far from over. Varkon had retreated into the deeper canyon, regrouping his forces for a counterattack. Lyra and Cain knew that if they did not act quickly, the depot would fall. They devised a plan that relied on the strengths of both species, humans' ingenuity and Illyrians' agility. Lyra's heart raced as they set their strategy into motion, but she trusted Cain to lead his team effectively. As the final assault began, Lyra noticed the differences in how their forces operated. Humans were methodical, using tools and tactics to outsmart the enemy. Illyrians moved like shadows, striking swiftly and with precision. Together, they formed a powerful combination, each compensating for the other's weaknesses. Lyra felt a surge of hope. Perhaps this collaboration could be more than temporary. Perhaps it could change the future of their worlds. During the assault, Lyra and Cain found themselves face to face with Varkon. He sneered, underestimating the bond that had formed between them. "You trust humans?" He spat. "Foolish. They will betray you." Lyra tightened her grip on her blade, her eyes blazing. "No," she said firmly. "I trust the human beside me, because he has proven his honor. That is more than I can say for you." Cain stepped forward, his own weapon raised. "We stand together," he said. "And together, we will end this." The fight was intense. Varkon was ruthless, striking with speed and strength that tested their limits. But Lyra and Cain moved as one, anticipating each other's actions, protecting one another, and covering weaknesses. The battle pushed them to their limits, forcing them to rely on trust, instinct, and skill. Finally, with a coordinated strike, they defeated Varkon. He fell to the ground, defeated but alive, his arrogance shattered. Lyra looked at Cain, breathing heavily, her heart pounding not just from exertion but from the bond that had been forged in the heat of combat. She realized that this human had become indispensable to her, not just as an ally, but as someone who had changed her understanding of courage and loyalty. As the dust settled, they surveyed the battlefield. The depot was secure, and their forces had survived. Humans and Illyrians had fought together, side by side, achieving something neither could have accomplished alone. Lyra felt a sense of pride, not just in victory, but in the unity they had created. That night, as the twin moons rose over the canyon, Lyra could not sleep. She replayed the events of the battle in her mind, thinking of Cain's calm presence, his protective instincts, and his unwavering courage. Hatred for humans no longer held its grip on her. In its place was something more complex: admiration, respect, and a strange, unspoken connection she could not yet name. She knew the war was far from over. There would be more battles, more challenges, and more reasons to test her resolve. But she also knew that Cain had changed her. He had shown her that humans were capable of honor, intelligence, and bravery. He had shown her that trust was possible, even between enemies. Lyra stood at the edge of the canyon, gazing at the stars above Virelia. She felt the weight of responsibility, the burden of her people, and the uncertainty of the future. Yet she also felt hope. Hope that humans and Illyrians could find a way to coexist, perhaps even thrive together. And somewhere deep inside, she knew that her journey was no longer just about war. It was about understanding, trust, and a connection that could shape not only her heart, but the fate of her world. The wind whispered through the canyon, carrying with it the scent of smoke, metal, and something else, something she could not name but recognized in her chest. Lyra turned her gaze toward Kane's camp, where he was speaking with his soldiers, calm and confident as always. A small, unbidden smile touched her lips. The princess who once hated humans had begun to see the possibility of friendship, trust, and perhaps something even more profound. The battle had tested her, challenged her beliefs, and opened her heart in ways she had never expected. And though the war still loomed on the horizon, Lyra knew that the days ahead would be different. She would not face them alone. Kane would be there. And together, they would face whatever came next. Their hearts and minds united in a way that neither species could have predicted. The following days were a whirlwind of planning, coordination, and constant vigilance. Princess Lyra found herself spending more time with Captain Elias Kane than she had ever expected. Together, they organized patrols, rebuilt villages, and trained their forces to work seamlessly. The humans and Illyrians began to trust each other, their once separate teams now moving with fluid coordination. Lyra could see the change in her people. Even the most stubborn Illyrians had begun to respect humans, seeing that courage and skill were not limited to one species. Lyra still struggled with her own feelings. She admired Kane. There was no denying it. Yet she was uncertain how to reconcile her growing respect with the hatred she had been taught since childhood. Every time she looked at him, her heart quickened. But she pushed the feeling aside, focusing instead on the missions ahead. She could not afford distractions, not when so much was at stake. One afternoon, a report came in. A rogue group of Illyrians had captured a small human settlement on the outskirts of Virelia. The group had taken hostages, demanding that their demands be met or the humans would face certain death. Lyra's blood boiled at the thought of her own people causing such harm, yet she knew that acting recklessly could cost even more lives. Kane was already preparing a plan, his calm confidence inspiring everyone around him. "We need a strike team," he said, outlining his strategy. "Precision and coordination are key. We move in together, protect the hostages, and neutralize the threat. No one gets left behind." Lyra nodded, impressed by his careful approach. It was not brute force that would win this mission, but intelligence, timing, and trust. She assembled a mixed squad of humans and Illyrians, including some of her most skilled warriors. The team moved out at dawn, the first light of the twin moons glinting off their armor. As they approached the settlement, Lyra could see the rogue faction's guards patrolling the perimeter. Kane signaled for silence, and the team moved like shadows, their steps deliberate and precise. Lyra's heart pounded, not just from the danger ahead, but from the proximity of Kane. He moved beside her effortlessly, anticipating her actions without the need for words. The trust between them had grown to something unspoken, yet unbreakable. The team entered the settlement, quickly securing the streets and moving toward the main building where the hostages were held. Energy blades clashed with metal, and sparks flew as the rogue Illyrians resisted. Lyra fought with controlled fury, her strikes precise and effective. Kane was always near, guiding the humans and providing support wherever it was needed. Together, they created a rhythm, a dance of strategy and skill that seemed almost effortless. Inside the building, they found the hostages huddled in fear. Kane moved forward, signaling for Lyra to cover him as he freed the humans. She glanced at him, noticing the calm determination in his eyes. He had saved lives countless times before. Yet each act of courage seemed to deepen her admiration. She realized that she trusted him completely, not just as a warrior, but as someone who understood her in ways no one else ever had. The final confrontation came in the main hall. Varkan's lieutenant, a tall and vicious warrior, stepped forward to challenge them. Lyra and Cain moved together. Their actions synchronized. Cain's strategy and Lyra's skill complemented each other perfectly. The fight was intense, but they prevailed, subduing the lieutenant without unnecessary harm. The hostages were safe, and the rogue faction retreated, their morale broken by the unexpected unity of humans and Illyrians. After the mission, Lyra and Cain stood together on the settlement's roof, surveying the sunrise. The town was safe, and the people were beginning to rebuild. Lyra felt a quiet satisfaction, a warmth that had nothing to do with victory alone. Cain turned to her, his eyes reflecting the early light. "You did well," he said softly. "Your people are lucky to have you." Lyra's chest tightened. She wanted to dismiss the praise, to focus on duty alone. But she could not ignore the truth in her heart. "We did this together," she replied. Her voice was steady, yet there was a softness in it that surprised her. Cain's lips curved into a small smile, and for a moment, the world seemed to pause around them. In the days that followed, Lyra found herself thinking about Cain constantly. Not just as a captain or a warrior, but as someone who had changed her understanding of humans. She began to notice the small things, the way he moved with care, the calmness in his voice, the respect he showed to both humans and Illyrians. She could no longer deny that her feelings had shifted, though she struggled to name them. One evening, as they returned to their headquarters after a long day, a young Illyrian approached Lyra. "Princess," he said hesitantly, "I've never seen humans act like this before. They are different. Captain Cain? He is different." Lyra nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. Cain was unlike any human she had encountered. He had honor, bravery, and intelligence, and he treated others with respect. It was rare, perhaps unique, and she felt a deep sense of gratitude for it. She could only hope her people would learn from him, as she had. Later that night, Lyra walked alone through the camp, reflecting on the events of the day. She paused near Cain's quarters, hearing the faint sound of his voice as he gave instructions to his team. Something in her chest stirred, a feeling she could no longer ignore. She realized that she cared for him not just as an ally, but as someone she wanted to be near, someone she wanted to understand and trust completely. The next mission came quickly. Reports indicated that Varkan was regrouping and planning an attack on a nearby human colony. Lyra and Cain were called to lead a joint strike team. As they prepared, one of the 10Y, T4 mission, T4 mission, T4 mission, Lyra felt the familiar mix of anticipation and nervousness. The stakes were higher than ever, and failure could cost countless lives. Yet she also felt a strange sense of courage, knowing that Cain would be by her side. The mission was grueling. They navigated treacherous terrain, avoided traps, and engaged Varkan's forces in a series of skirmishes. Lyra relied on Cain's judgment as much as her own instincts, and together they guided their mixed squad through the dangers. During one intense encounter, Cain shielded Lyra from an energy blast, pushing her to safety even at the risk of his own life. She stared at him, her heart pounding, realizing fully that her feelings had grown beyond respect or admiration. She cared for him deeply, and he had no idea. By the time the sun rose over the battlefield, the rogue forces were defeated. The human colony was safe, and both species had proven that unity could overcome even the most determined adversaries. Lyra and Cain stood together, surveying the aftermath. Exhaustion weighed on them, yet there was a quiet triumph in their hearts. That night, Lyra reflected on everything that had happened. Her hatred for humans had all but faded, replaced by trust, respect, and feelings she could no longer deny. Cain had shown her that humans were capable of honor, bravery, and compassion. He had changed her perspective, challenged her prejudices, and captured a piece of her heart without even realizing it. She knew that the war was far from over. Challenges would continue, and danger would not relent. Yet she also knew that she would no longer face them alone. Cain had become more than an ally. He had become a part of her journey, a guiding presence she could rely on. Lyra looked up at the stars, feeling a quiet sense of hope. The princess, who once hated humans, had begun to understand them, and in doing so, she had begun to understand herself. Her heart, once closed by prejudice and fear, had opened in ways she could never have imagined. And though the battles ahead would test them all, she knew that with Cain by her side, anything was possible. The winds of Virelia carried the scent of battle. As Princess Lyra stood on the cliffs, overlooking the vast plains below, reports had come in that Varkon's forces, regrouped and more dangerous than ever, were moving to strike a major human settlement. This was their chance to either solidify the fragile alliance between humans and Illyrians, or watch it crumble in flames. Lyra's chest tightened with determination. She had learned much since the first battle, but the stakes had never been higher. Lives were at risk, and the future of both species hung in the balance. Cain approached silently, his calm presence grounding her. He had been through countless battles, yet his steady confidence never wavered. Lyra felt her heart respond, a mix of admiration, trust, and something deeper she could no longer ignore. They shared a brief nod, an unspoken understanding passing between them. This fight would be dangerous, but they would face it together. The allied forces assembled on the plains below, humans and Illyrians working side by side. The soldiers moved in harmony, a testament to the unity Lyra and Cain had forged. There was a sense of anticipation in the air, but also hope. For the first time, Lyra saw humans and Illyrians not as enemies, but as equals in courage and strength. As Varkon's army approached, Lyra could feel the tension building. The rogue faction was larger than any they had faced, and they were ruthless. Yet the combined forces of humans and Illyrians were ready. Cain surveyed the battlefield, issuing commands with precision. Lyra moved alongside him, coordinating the Illyrians and supporting the humans wherever needed. Their teamwork was seamless, a perfect balance of strategy, skill, and trust. The battle began with the roar of energy cannons and the clash of blades. Lyra fought at the forefront, her energy blades slicing through Varkon's forces with grace and deadly accuracy. Cain was beside her, guiding human squads, protecting the vulnerable, and leading counterattacks with calm authority. Their combined presence inspired their forces, raising morale and instilling courage even in the most frightened soldiers. Hours passed, the battlefield a chaotic dance of strategy, skill, and sheer determination. Lyra and Cain moved as one, covering each other, anticipating movements, and protecting those around them. They had become more than allies. They were partners in every sense, their trust unshakable, their actions perfectly synchronized. In the midst of the battle, Varkon himself appeared, commanding a group of elite warriors. He charged at them, confident in his strength. Lyra met him head-on, their blades clashing with a sound that echoed across the plains. Cain engaged Varkon's guards, his focus unwavering even as the danger escalated. Together, Lyra and Cain fought with precision, using their combined strength to overcome impossible odds. At one critical moment, Varkon aimed a deadly strike at Cain. Lyra reacted instinctively, throwing herself in front of him. The energy blade barely missed her, scorching her armor. Cain's hand shot out, steadying her, his eyes filled with concern. "Are you all right?" he shouted over the chaos. Lyra nodded, heart pounding not just from the near danger, but from the closeness between them. She realized in that moment that her feelings for him had grown deeper than she had allowed herself to admit. The tide of battle shifted. Cain and Lyra's forces pushed forward, forcing Varkon's army into retreat. The rogue commander, seeing his plans fail, attempted to flee. Lyra and Cain pursued him, their movements coordinated, relentless. Finally, they cornered Varkon in a narrow canyon. He stood defiant, but exhausted, realizing he could not win. "You think you've won," he spat. "But humans and Illyrians cannot last together. Your alliance is fragile. It will break." Lyra stepped forward, her blade glowing with energy. "Our alliance is stronger than your hatred," she said firmly. "And together, we are unstoppable." Cain stood beside her, silent support in his eyes. With a final coordinated strike, they disarmed Varkon, ending his threat once and for all. The battle was over. Exhausted soldiers began to regroup, tending to the wounded and securing the area. Lyra and Cain stood together, surveying the battlefield. Their forces had survived, the rogue faction was defeated, and the human settlement was safe. There was relief in the air, but also a quiet triumph. For the first time, humans and Illyrians had truly fought as one, proving that unity was stronger than fear or prejudice. As night fell, Lyra walked with Cain along the cliff edge, overlooking the plains where the battle had raged. The stars reflected in the calm waters below, and for a moment, the chaos of war seemed far away. Lyra felt a weight lift from her chest, replaced by a warmth that she could no longer deny. "You were incredible today," Cain said softly, his voice carrying a sincerity that made her heart skip. "I could not have asked for a better partner." My. Lyra's lips curved into a small smile. "Nor could I," she admitted. She felt the truth of it deep in her heart. I have learned much from you, Elias. About humans, about trust, and about myself." Cain's eyes met hers, steady and unwavering. "And I have learned from you, Lyra. You are brave, strong, and wise. You inspire everyone around you, including me." His words made her chest tighten, a mixture of emotion she could no longer contain. The wind blew gently across the cliffs, carrying the faint scent of smoke and victory. Lyra took a deep breath, feeling a sense of peace she had never known. She had hated humans once, seeing them as invaders and enemies. But through courage, patience, and the example of one man, she had come to see them differently. Humans were capable of honor, loyalty, and compassion, and Cain had become the living proof of that truth. Lyra reached for Cain's hand, hesitating for only a moment before their fingers intertwined. He looked at her, surprise flickering in his eyes, then a gentle smile. In that simple gesture, words were unnecessary. Trust, respect, and something far deeper had been communicated without a single sound. The alliance between humans and Illyrians had been forged in battle, tested through trials, and strengthened by understanding. And as Lyra stood with Cain beside her, she realized that the war had given her more than just victory. It had given her hope, unity, and a heart open to new possibilities. The following days were spent securing peace. Both humans and Illyrians worked together to rebuild settlements, restore resources, and care for the wounded. Lyra took part in every mission, guiding her people and learning from the humans, while Cain remained her steadfast partner, sharing both responsibility and moments of quiet connection. One evening, as they watched the twin moons rise over the plains, Lyra turned to Cain, her eyes reflecting the soft silver light. "I never thought I would say this," she admitted, "but I am glad humans came to Virelia. They have taught me so much." Cain smiled, squeezing her hand gently. "And I am glad I met you. You've shown me what it means to truly lead, to fight not just with strength, but with wisdom and honor." Lyra felt her heart swell with emotion. For the first time in her life, she felt a certainty that had nothing to do with duty or battle. She had found someone she could trust completely, someone who had earned her respect, admiration, and love. The plains below were quiet now, the fires of battle extinguished. The future of Virelia, and the bond between humans and Illyrians was brighter than ever. Lyra and Cain stood together, looking at the stars, knowing that the journey ahead would be challenging, but that they would face it side by side. The princess who had once hated humans now saw the truth. Courage, honor, and love could cross even the widest divides. And with Cain at her side, she was ready to face whatever the universe had in store. Together, they would lead their people, protect their worlds, and write a new chapter in the history of both species. A chapter filled with unity, hope, and the promise of a brighter future. The night air was calm, carrying the whispers of the wind and the faint hum of distant stars. Lyra rested her hand on Cain's, feeling the warmth of his presence, the certainty of his loyalty, and the strength of their bond. The battlefield was behind them, and the future stretched out before them, endless and full of possibility. For Lyra, for Cain, and for all who had fought and survived, this was the beginning of a new era. A time when hearts and worlds could unite, and when hope would shine brighter than any conflict.